Travis Tiger. So father, son. You can tell by the
Awesome.
gray hair that I'm the father, he's the son. And I gave you a little background in the email I sent to you, kind of just that, where there's three of us. My other son is not on the call, obviously, but we're all coaches. I grew up coaching these guys in wrestling and lacrosse and all that stuff. And so, we're into this podcast business, brand new, trying to just kind of do some things that are just similar to you and, give back to the younger kids. And what our goal here is to try to get people who have excelled both athletically and kind of in life, and give those secrets of how they do that back to the young kids. That's
Cool.
that's the goal.
Love it.
So you have a great story from how you got started in just really ridiculous. I mean, to get started in some place where nothing existed is so different than everybody else. So if you and I know you've done your own podcast and done some stuff. So if you could just take us kind of like how you got started, what was the passion for continuing when you had to travel so far and things like that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So for me, being from Arizona, when I was born, there were like less than 20 girls between the ages of 6 and 19 playing in the entire state. And it's a big state. So it was very, very small when I was growing up, not just on the boys' side, but especially on the girls' side. And by the time I was 5, I had fallen in love with the Mighty Ducks movies. And it actually worked out pretty well because my dad was commuting back and forth to Southern California. So I got to go see some real Ducks games as a little kid. They got me these like strap-on shoes or skates that would go onto my shoes, like the little plastic Fisher-Price ones. And I would just skate up and down the driveway for hours. I loved it. And then shortly after that, the Coyotes had come to town from Winnipeg. And so the Phoenix Coyotes started up in 1996. And shortly after that, more and more rinks started getting built around Arizona. And one of them happened to be in my hometown of Chandler. And so I actually started as a roller hockey player. And then once that rink was built, I switched over to ice hockey. But I mean, as you can imagine, because girls hockey was so small, I went to my local rink and it was all boys. But I think for me, I don't know if it was because in the Mighty Ducks movies, right, like there's one girl and everybody else is a guy. I don't know if that's what made me feel comfortable or if I just loved the sport so much that I didn't care. I had a brother. He was my only sibling. So I don't know. It just didn't faze me to play with the boys. I wasn't intimidated at all. And I just identified as a hockey player, and that's all I ever wanted to be. And I actually had a phenomenal boys hockey experience. I loved it. From the time I was, 7 years old all the way up until high school. I played with the guys and had a great time. Played with most of them from start to finish. So I think, had that respect from a lot of them for the entire time. And I know, unfortunately, that's not how every girl's experience is playing with the guys, but I was lucky. And I've also been this size. I'm like 5'8" since I was about 11. So back when I was growing up, it's different now. You can't start checking until you're 13. But when I was growing up, you could start checking at 11. So I was like a foot taller than all the boys, and I loved that aspect of the game. I loved the body contact, loved checking. I played travel hockey, and being in Arizona, travel for us was like 6 hours to California. Whereas, travel in New England is sometimes you've got 10 teams within an hour radius of you. So that was a lot. So by the time I got to high school and I really needed to kind of explore another option for figuring out how I was going to get to girls or women's college hockey, I started traveling back and forth to Colorado to be able to play so I could get recruited. So I started playing on a girls team in high school in Colorado and traveled constantly for that. So I think when you ask, what was that like, sort of the sacrifices you had to make and the travel and all that, I mean, for me, I was kind of used to it by then because of how much travel we had when we were kids being in Arizona. And so it was kind of a smooth transition. I loved my time in Colorado. I loved my teammates there. I had a ton of fun. We were a really strong team at the time. We were kind of the underdog because we were one of the teams from out west playing against all these teams in New England and in the Midwest. And it was awesome to be able to prove a lot of people wrong, and that Western girls hockey really was growing. I think in my graduating class from Colorado, there were like 7 of us that went on and played Division I college hockey. So that was super cool. And then during that time in high school, I also had the opportunity to play 2 years for Team USA's under 18 team, which was an incredible experience. Also very humbling because I went from being one of the best players on my Colorado team to being a 4th line grinder on the US team. But yeah, it all paid off, and had a great youth hockey experience, and it ultimately led me to play my college hockey at Harvard University and make it onto the Olympic team. So that's kind of the high level of the youth story. So anywhere we want to go from there.
Yeah, I just want one. Yeah. So do you think that being from Arizona, being, when you played against the New England teams, all that, do you think that, and you said there's 7 girls who played with you who kind of went D1, you think that collective attitude of, hey, we need to prove ourselves every single day against these established programs, if that gave you the drive to get to where you guys got to?
Yeah, I think so. I think that program had been really strong for a while. When I was in my first year I would have been a first year 16U. We had Pierre Turgeon come and coach us because his daughter was on our team. And I think that was a real turning point because he taught us and pushed us in a different way that any of us had ever been pushed before. I mean, he was like fresh out of the league, and he treated it like, not fully like an NHL team, but he held us to some pretty high expectations. And when you're a 15-year-old kid, that's a pretty eye-opening experience. But he coached us as if we were the underdogs. And it wasn't in a way that, he didn't have confidence in us. He did. It was just, I'm going to teach you systems, and I'm going to condition you in a way that is going to put you guys in a position to beat the Shaddocks of the world, or to beat the Assabet Valleys of the world, some of these big powerhouses in girls hockey at the time. So we were very, very disciplined to our systems. He had one of our coaches on the bench literally just held a stopwatch, making sure we got on and off the ice at 30 seconds every single time for our shifts, which again, for youth hockey is like pretty intense. But I think that really kind of helped us. I mean, we beat Assabet at nationals that year, which had never happened before. I think we tied Shattuck. We had a great year. And I think for a lot of us, that was our way of realizing, wow, if we really put the work in, if we're disciplined, if we stay focused, and if we believe in ourselves, most importantly, even though we are the underdog on paper, we have a chance. And so I think that was kind of a turning point. Most of us had 2 more years after that. And we weren't coached by Pierre after that. We were coached by Marnie Hill, who was awesome. But I think being able to see in that season of 16U that, wow, we can compete, and we're not just some rinky-dink team from out West. I think that really built up our confidence, and I think it gave us a lot of pride in being the underdog who could kind of cut some of these bigger teams' legs out from under them.
That's awesome.
That's great. So seeing how you kind of had to scrap a little bit to get not only your area where you guys are coming from put on the map, but kind of like the women's game put on the map. How does it look differently now? Like, when you're working with the youth, what do you see? Like, how proud are you when you see things that are changing and how it's like more established and there's way more teams out there? Like, can you talk us through the past to present kind of visual?
Yeah, so I'll speak primarily to Arizona just because that's what I know the most. But about 7 years ago, maybe a little before, there was a guy here in Arizona who I actually grew up in the same rink as him. His name's Matt Schott. And his dad actually coached my little brother because his little brother's my brother's age. And so we had like known each other sort of throughout the years, but we were never really close. But he got a job with the Coyotes about 7 years ago as the director of amateur hockey development. And without like really any major tie to me or any other female hockey player in the state, he kind of recognized that, wow, this is, you know, I'm coming into this blank slate, and where are the areas that we can really improve in Arizona? And he targeted early on girls and women's hockey. Fortunately, that was all during the time where I was still in college, and I'm about to make my Olympic push, trying to make that team. And so he immediately started getting me involved. And I was doing, you know, community events when I was back at home. I would make appearances at games. And then when I actually made the Olympics, that's when he and I started like really talking and figuring out, okay, how can we really elevate this and take this to the next level? And so we identified a couple problems. Girls hockey, after he started like really making a push for it and investing the time and the resources into it, it started to really increase. Our numbers started really increasing, which has always been a big challenge. It's just pure numbers here in Arizona. What's that?
Like, what are the numbers like now? You said there were 20 back when you first started. Like, you know, in Arizona, are we at, you know, 10,000 yet, or?
Is it like 9,000?
I don't think we're quite there. I think we're at like 900, but you look at, you know, percent growth over however many years. It's I'll pull it up because I'm curious. But
I read an article in USA Today, and I think they quoted 8,600, but that could be totally inaccurate. And maybe that's overall hockey in the state.
That probably is overall, because the boys hockey side has really been growing. I'll find it as I'm.
Oh, I see it now, Lyndsey. It says girls hockey is now up 150% to nearly 800 players.
Mm-hmm.
150% though increase. That's great.
And what's that 150 over? Like 5 years?
Yeah, 5 years.
Yeah. So really, I mean, like I was definitely involved in that. I give a lot of credit to Matt for kind of getting that going. But yeah, I started getting involved pretty heavily after the Olympics and after I graduated. And we started to realize, you know, okay, the numbers are starting to grow. We're starting to get more girls interested. And we thought, okay, well, how do we continue that? And we started to realize that we would get a lot of girls to come into our Learn to Play program with the Coyotes, but then they wouldn't continue. And we'd started talking to a lot of these families, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that, you know, she doesn't like being out there with the boys. She doesn't like all male coaches. It's just not a good fit. Now, I was never the girl that needed that. Right. So for me, I was like, oh, come on, like they need to get over it. They can play with the boys till they're 12. The more I started listening and learning and hearing what parents and kids were saying, I was realizing, you know what? No, like we're cutting out all of those girls who do want to have that all-girl experience, and that's totally cool. So we started a program called Small Fries that I'm the head coach of. We still do it today, and that's really where we get the girls who are just starting out. We put them in an all-girls environment. We only have female coaches out there, and we've seen our retention rates increase tremendously through that program. Almost every single girl who goes through it continues to play. And so that's really helped us, you know, not just get them through the door and sign up for a year, but to get them to sign up year after year after year. So that's been really helpful with getting our numbers to grow, and is something I never had access to as a kid. But then we started to say, okay, well, our numbers are increasing like crazy over the last, 5, 6, 7 years. And yet, how is it that we had 3 all-girls teams 7 years ago, and we still have only 3 girls teams now, even though we've had this 150% growth?
Yeah.
And a lot of times what happens, or what's happened in the history of Arizona and a lot of other Western states, is that you get, a couple really passionate parents, which is awesome. They start up a program, their kid graduates, and then the program kind of fizzles. And then another passionate parent comes in and they start a new program. And so there's just been like these iterations of girls programs that can never really like hold on for a long period of time. And we thought, what if we put the resources and the support of the Arizona Coyotes behind girls hockey? Like, let's just see what can happen. And that's what we did last year. We started up the Arizona Cachinas, and we took it from, there were 3 teams the year before with a different association. We became the only girls association in the state, and we had 9 teams last year, and we're looking to expand to 12 this year. So it was kind of like if we build it and give the girls like cream of the crop everything, then they will come, and it's been a really phenomenal experience. So, you look back to when I was, one of maybe 20 girls playing in the state to now we've got, hundreds, and we've now got 200 in our association alone. It's really, really different, and it's really exciting to see. And you're seeing that growth in a lot of other markets. And the good thing is that we're all in very close contact with one another. I work with a lot of Western states. Portland, Oregon is really trying to get their girls program up and running. They started with like 10 kids 4 or 5 years ago. Now they've got over 100. So we can all start really helping each other and trying to scale this, because that's, at the end of the day, our girls need teams to play. They don't want to be traveling to New England every month. So it's the more we can grow Western hockey, the better off we are.
Yeah, and that's an amazing job that you guys have done. And I think you also if the time that we're in right now has seen just the evolution of women's sports in general. Travis and I still coach wrestling, and the girls wrestling programs in this area have just started to flourish. We're seeing tournaments now from girls only. We see girls coming out in the mat and beating out kids, which is awesome. And it's happening in all those sports. So it's a great groundswell that I guess you guys all feed off of each other, right? I mean, the success of lacrosse, helps with the success of hockey and vice versa. And
that's exactly what I was thinking of. I'm thinking of coming from a lacrosse background, where New England and Maryland, that Virginia, those are the dominant forces for so many years. And I think 2016, and I think maybe 2014, Denver wins the first ever national championship for a team that's not on the East Coast, and it just blows up. And now you've got kids from California, Oregon, Montana, who are playing for the top D1 programs. And it's like you're saying, it's just, you start getting those club teams who are out west. They're coming and they're kicking the kids' ass from the tri-state area. It's great. And it's really impressive to see how quickly it can go when you get that support, and there's the support from the Denver Pioneers, who just won the championship. They do so many camps and clinics out there, and they host their own tournaments in the summer and stuff. And just like you said, when you have that level of, we're going to give you guys everything that everyone else is getting, they will take it and they will feed off it. So
I think it's a really interesting. I think the next 5 to 10 years are going to be really interesting because, one of the biggest challenges we have is every Western states, even, in Anaheim, the Lady Ducks program's been around for 20 years and they still deal with this. Right now it's so convenient for New England teams to recruit quality players in New England. So a lot of them don't like to spend their recruiting budgets going out and watching teams from out west. And because of that, a lot of what we're seeing is the top girls who are gonna, they're good. They're gonna get to go to Division I schools regardless. They're leaving in high school to go play in New England because that's where the coaches are recruiting. So I think we're at kind of an inflection point where I agree with you. Like, the quality of what we have out west is so good, but these kids are still feeling pressured to leave if they want to be seen. And I'm really interested to see how that dynamic shifts in the next 5 years. And I don't think this COVID situation helps because it's really gonna cut into these recruiting budgets. But we'll see. It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, sorry. COVID just might actually kill wrestling. I mean, not even sure we're going to be there yet, so that's a whole other thing. Do you see is it a lot of prep schools that kids leave to? Because we experience that with a lot of sports here. We'll get some really good kids. They'll get up to the junior year, and then they leave to go to a prep school because they think they're going to get better recognition or a better pipeline to the college they want to go to. Is that something you guys experience?
100%. I mean, not so much in Arizona. We're still, I think, kind of, we definitely have some kids who leave and who have gone to prep school. But we're in an interesting position right now where, it still is a very clear dividing line. Like, the girls who are going to go D1 and play in prep school and play, in college hockey and beyond, they are so much better than where a lot of our girls are at right now. A lot of our girls are more at like the tier 2 level rather than the tier 1 level. And we recognize, like, I would be completely hypocritical if I sat here and told a top level player, hey, you got to stay here in Arizona. And because I left, so, you know, we're kind of in a different position where we can say, you know what, look, why don't, like, if that's what you think is going to get you where you need to go, we will happily advise you and help you kind of pick whatever prep school is going to be best or whatever program back east is going to be best. But we're not going to hold you back. Places like Anaheim are in a little different situation because they've won at the tier 1 level. They've won national championships before. So when kids are leaving their program, you're kind of looking at it going like, wait,
Where you going?
what? Like, this is an elite level program, right? You can, and especially for the parents, it's like like, it's going to cost you another college education essentially for you to ship them off to prep school. So it's a really challenging issue. Again, it takes me back to just, you know, my time in Colorado and being very thankful that I didn't have to ship off to prep school.
So not shipping off to prep school, but I do want to transition into, you did end up in New England. You did make that trip out there. Can you talk about, you know, maybe a little bit of the recruiting process, how you got bought into, you know, going to New England? I mean, obviously that's where most of the premier collegiate teams are. Was there a consideration to stay with a team out west, or was New England kind of always your goal, or how did you get bought into Harvard? Can you talk us through that?
Well, so you have to keep in mind for women's hockey, out west is like Minnesota. Actually, technically, I think North Dakota is the most Western school for women's college hockey, D1 anyway. And so for me, I think I approached it a little differently. Location wasn't as big of a concern because I knew that no matter what, it was going to be a 2.5, 3 hour plane ride or more wherever I was going to go to school. So I'm kind of thankful for that, because a lot of people who, you know, they live in Minnesota or they live in Boston, there is that pressure to stay close to home. And for me, that was kind of taken off my shoulders. But I figured early on that I wanted to go Ivy League, mainly because I really felt like if I wouldn't have gotten into an Ivy League school completely on my own. You know, I always got good grades, but it's not like I, you know, was acing the SATs or taking, you know, 50 AP classes in high school because I was traveling so much for Colorado. And so I always told myself, you know, one, at that time, there was no women's professional hockey, and the state of women's professional hockey is still very fragmented, unfortunately, right now. But I always knew, like, I was going to need a good education to go and pursue what I wanted to do. And so I saw getting to go to an Ivy League school to play hockey as like the ultimate reward for all the time I had committed to my sport. You know, the time that took me away from taking all those AP classes and being like the top 1% student in my high school, I was putting that time toward hockey. So I just saw it as a really amazing opportunity and an award to be able to go to an Ivy League school. So I ended up really coming down between Cornell and Harvard because they were two of the stronger schools at the time. And I actually was really set on Cornell. They had a really strong hockey team that year. They went to the Frozen Four. And I'm so thankful that my parents kind of helped talk me out of it, primarily because, you know, I kind of go back against what I just said about location didn't matter, but there's a big difference between Ithaca
and Harvard.
Yeah, big difference between Cornell and Harvard and Ithaca and Cambridge. So I am very thankful I chose Harvard. I absolutely love my time there, and it completely shaped me as a person. And especially when you start getting down to like the US-Canada rivalry on the national team, a lot of Canadians play on that on that Cornell team, which is totally fine, and it would have been fine, but I'm thankful that I made that choice.
that's why the Big Red always like, they're always so obsessed with Cornell, because there's nothing else for them to go to. They've got to stay at Cornell. You know, that's why they're always every Cornell person, you can always tell, is like diehard Cornell. Their alumni programs are always so intense and so pure. They all know everybody, and it's because they're out there. They're out
Yep.
in Ithaca. What are you going to do? I mean, you guys can at least explore the Boston area, Mass,
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
check it out.
It's so, you're so right. I never really thought about it, but my fiance's cousins both went to Cornell, or her cousin and her cousin's husband. And we went to their house in California. One was a volleyball player, one was a hockey player. And we walk in and they have this like giant mural on their wall of like this street at Cornell with like some of the classroom buildings. And I'm like, I mean, I loved my time at Harvard, but I don't know if I would put like a giant mural of Cambridge
Right,
up on my wall.
The archway.
So that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just a big picture of Harvard Yard.
Hey,
That's
Lyndsey,
great.
you just, not to jump back too much, but you just mentioned your parents influencing your decision. And we talked earlier about all the travel you had to make and all the sacrifices that Lyndsey made, but there had to be a lot of sacrifices that your parents made, your family made. And you also seem like a very, I mean, we're talking to you now years later, but you seem like a very structured person and kind of good decision maker. Talk a little bit how your parents influenced all that and where you got that, that ability to kind of think ahead and plan ahead.
Yeah. So I probably didn't really develop that skill until I was about halfway through college. I think having supportive parents it's the best thing in the world. It also can, I don't want to say become a crutch, but I was not prepared to like really take care of myself when things got tough and to manage my time on my own when I got to college, because my parents had always been there helping me through all of that. I mean, I joke, but it's kind of serious that my mom like basically got me into Harvard. I mean, she did a lot. I remember she was like assembling these packets that had like a DVD of me playing and all these things, and she's like shipping them out to schools, and I'm just like, yeah, whatever, like, that's cool. So they've been extremely supportive, but I think when push came to shove and I got to college, it was different. It was challenging. I remember, I had to go get this stress test right out of the gate in college. And I was so like anxious about having to get on the train by myself and go into Boston and go to MGH and get this test done that I like called my mom crying at 2 a.m. and was like, I need you to cancel it. And so she canceled it for me. And then I go to the rink the next day and my coaches are like, what is wrong with you? Like, you can't just do that when we schedule something at Mass General. And so, I think when I really learned how to find that drive and really start digging into time management and things like that, it didn't happen until I call it my aha moment. But after my sophomore year, we always have exit meetings with our coaches before we go home for the summer. And at that time, Coach Stone, who was my coach at Harvard, was projected to be the Olympic coach. And she sat me down, and I had like an average freshman year, pretty average sophomore year. And she sat me down and she's like, Lyndsey, do you want this? And this is less than 2 years out from the Olympics. And I'm like, yeah, of course I want this. Like, everybody wants this. And she's like, no, do you want this?
Everybody says they want this.
Right, exactly. And I was like, Coach, do you think I have a chance? And she's very blunt. And she was like, first 3 lines, probably not. But that 4th line is open for the taking. And that was like, for me, when everything changed, because that's when I said, wow, I literally have the Olympic hockey coach looking me in the eye, telling me I have a chance to make that team. And if I don't do everything I can to control what I can control and put myself in the best position possible to make it onto that roster, then I will regret it forever. So that's when I really started like holding myself accountable. I really started managing my time, like became obsessed with the process of just staying locked in day after day and trusting that, you know what, I have a plan for how I'm going to get there and I need to just stay consistent with it day after day. So, as far as like the mental game is concerned, I would say the 18 months between that moment and the Olympics were like the most pivotal, and we can dive in however you guys want in that regard.
Well, my
Yes.
my first question is, what line did you make? Did you make fourth, like, were you fourth line,
That's a
third
really
line?
good question. So I was fourth line,
Okay.
but what's interesting is so right when we started training, it would have been like August of 2013. We all moved out to Boston and started training together. And Amanda Kessel, who had been one of the better players on the team, Phil Kessel's sister, she was injured. And I can't remember exactly what her injury was, but she was injured. And she was injured for most of training. And so she played primarily up till that point with Kendall Coyne, who's obviously very, very fast, and Brianna Decker, who's very fast and very talented. And they were, I think, the second line at that time. And coach was basically like, we need somebody to fill in for Kess during that time. And she pulled me up. And at first I'm like, I'm big and I am bulky and I will battle in the corners, but I am not fast. Like and you're going to put me out there with Kendall Coyne. But like, of course I never said that. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do what coach says because that's all I can do. And, I remember the first couple games, first couple practices, I definitely was a step behind. And I could tell there were some frustrations from my line mates, but I just kept sticking with it. And eventually I started to really kind of get comfortable. We started like scoring some goals as a line, and it was probably the most confident I had ever felt. And that was really when I went from like, oh my gosh, I'm just happy to be here. I'll be a fourth liner. I'll sit on the bench. I'll do whatever you need me to do. That's when I went from that to I belong here. And like, I can skate at the highest level. So Kess came back early January, like a month before we're leaving for the Olympics. And we had a scrimmage against a boys high school team, prep school team. And the lineup gets announced before, and I had been moved down to the fourth line, which I was kind of expecting. It was one of those where it was like, I knew it probably was coming, but I didn't want to fully believe it. But I got moved down. We go out. My parents were in town that weekend, and I still, in my mind, was like, you know what? It's a scrimmage. Like, everybody's going to get to play. They're going to roll the lines. That wasn't true at all. I think we played like 3 shifts that game as the fourth line. And I'm very thankful that I had that moment before we went to the Olympics, because I was able to like mentally readjust, because it's a very different role. Like, playing on the second line is a very different role than playing on the fourth line. Fourth line, you're getting like 20-second shifts. Your job is to get the puck in deep, hold it there, and just basically give your top line players a rest. And then when you're on the bench, like, you're the energy bus. You're the one pumping everybody up, keeping everybody positive. And so I just, I was fighting back tears the whole time, but nobody would know it because I had a smile on my face. I was just lifting everybody up. And I remember after that game, I go into the locker room, and we had like the hard hat award after, and Jocelyn Lamoureux was like, this person didn't really get to play a lot today, but when they did, they were going 100% and they were giving us a ton of energy. And she gave me the hard hat, and it was like,
That's awesome.
Okay, like,
That's great.
You know what? It's a different role, but I know what to do and I know how to do it well. So I did end up on the fourth line, but it was a journey getting there for sure.
That's great. You said the hard hat, because my next question was going to be, what was the environment from your teammates, and maybe like what were your former second line mates telling you, reassuring you when you did get bumped down? Like, were they right by you, like it's okay, like you're still this, you're like, what was the vibe from the team, the support that you had there?
Yeah. I'll kind of answer the first part first. So Olympic teams are weird because it's a mixture of a lot of different people, from a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different ages. I mean, when we first got, it's called centralization. So when we first got centralized, first there were 25 of us, and we had to be down to 21 by January. So that's kind of a stressful experience. But when we first got centralized, we had a 16-year-old on our team and a 32-year-old. So it's a huge age gap. Yeah, it's a huge age range. Whereas when you're used to being in college, everybody's pretty much the same age. So culturally, it really helps with that. But I think for the Harvard kids, Coach Stone had a very hard hat mentality. She didn't care if you were a first line player or fourth line grinder. She treated everybody the same, and she held everybody to the same expectations. So, that's how our Olympic team was run. And so that part of it was pretty easy for me and a couple of the other Harvard girls to adjust to and adapt to. It was harder for some of the players who hadn't really been coached like that before. But I think we all, were able to buy in, definitely some more so than others. It was interesting. I think when I think of like who really kind of supported me during that time, obviously like my Kendall and Decker are awesome. They were super pumped to get Amanda back because that's the line mate they had been missing. And I didn't take offense to that. I wouldn't have, if I were coaching that team, I wouldn't have done it any differently. But I ended up getting moved to the fourth line with Julie Chu, who by that time it was her fourth Olympics. She was a Harvard grad as well. She graduated a lot earlier than I did, but we kind of had that bond. And she had done it all. She went from being first liner to third to second to fourth. Like when you play 4 Olympics, you've done it all. And
yeah.
So she was really helpful. She was really supportive. It was good because she and I could always be honest with each other. Like we had to learn each other a little bit in the sense that it was just the two of us on that line, because they ended up taking one additional defenseman than you normally would. So our fourth line only had 2 people on it instead of 3. So we would have a center kind of rotate through with us when we did get out there. And whenever our name would get called to go out, she was always like, all right, buddy, let's go. And would like be shaking me. And I finally had to tell her, I'm like, Chewy, when you do that to me, it gets in my head as like, oh, like how lucky are we actually get to play. And I'm like, I don't like that. Like, I want to like treat every single minute of the game like I'm going out next shift.
Business.
Like yeah. And just like it's normal that we're going to get to go out there. It doesn't have to be this like big event. And she was like, I'm the total opposite. Like when I've been standing around for 10 minutes, I need to get like amped up. So it was just good to play with her. And I'm thankful that she was the one that I was on that line with, because we just were able to be honest and have that good relationship with each other.
It's great. You are lining up all the end of your stories with a perfect segue to my next question. What I wanted to talk about was whether you saw it at the Olympic level or maybe in college, like championship level communication.
Even high school, Trev, just we're talking about, having Pierre Turgeon as your coach. You kind of talked about it a little bit, but yeah, I'm sorry, Trev, finish it.
Yeah, so just championship level communication. I have a friend of mine who coaches boys lacrosse at Fairfield University. He just moved up to D1 level, and he talks to his team all the time about championship level communication, being comfortable and confident, talking aggressively but with respect to your teammates, and understanding that you're going to get in each other's faces, you're going to get angry, there might be a fight at practice, but it's all common goal, it's all directed the same direction, we're all on the same path. Can you talk about that at any level, or maybe, and if you have a great story about it, that'd be great.
Yeah, communication's hard. I think, I think Coach did a really good job with it. As far as, the way that she would communicate with us at Harvard and on the Olympic team was, she always kept it simple. Like her big thing was always like, as few rules as possible as is good, because it just sets you up to break rules. And when you start breaking rules, like when you as a coach start breaking your own rules, now all of a sudden you've undermined, what you're trying to do culturally with your program and with your communication. So she always said she only had one rule, and it was be on time. And, there definitely were some unwritten, non-negotiable things like being a good teammate and being a good human. But other than that, I mean, it was pretty simple. She definitely was way more direct when it came to the Olympic team. And it was interesting. I had never heard her explain this before until she and I were actually on like a town hall podcast the other night. And she's like, with the Olympic team, you see these kids so infrequently. I mean, we would have national team camps like once every 3 or 4 months. And so, and like the rosters are constantly changing after every single camp. So she's like, there is no room for being soft with these kids. She's like, you have to be direct with them because they need to know, like, if you didn't perform at this camp, you're not getting invited to the next one. And this is exactly what you need to do to be invited again later on. And so I think, you know, when it comes to kind of the championship communication and things like that, you have to really read your team and understand what their needs are and what the situation is, because she could be a little different with the college kids. She recognized that some kids were a little more breakable than other kids. Some kids needed that very direct, in-your-face communication. So I don't know if that completely answers your question.
It definitely does. I was also asking a little more like teammate to teammate communication, you know.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I do have
on ice, in the locker room, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Are you guys editing this, by the way?
Yeah, we'll probably cut up. We'll cut it.
Okay. Give me, like, I'm getting just drilled with emails right now. Let me shut off.
Okay. Yeah. No. Take that. Yeah. Take that.
It's annoying I'm sure it's going to be annoying for people to listen to.
It's all good.
Now it's just figuring out if I know how to do that. Let's see.
We don't know how to edit yet, but we'll figure it out. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
Jordan does the editing.
My other son, he does the editing.
He's the editor.
I'll send it to my brother to edit it for you if need be.
Cool.
One of our
older brothers seem to be the best editors.
He's younger brother, right? You have a younger brother?
He is younger brother, but he is a videographer for the Coyotes, so we both work for the team. And
it's a pretty cool job.
Yeah, he loves it, but he unfortunately got furloughed, so he's got some time right now.
Well, he's not alone. Everyone got furloughed.
It's crazy. We're down to like 40% of our company right now. Do you guys have any idea how to do this? I'm sorry to be a pain.
What are you trying to do, an Outlook or a Gmail?
Yeah, Outlook. And I'm on
that. You could sign out. That's the easy way to do it.
I could.
Top right corner.
It's assuming I know what my passwords are.
Oh, then don't sign out.
I mean, the ding is really not that. It's not getting.
If it's not bad on your guys' end,
it won't bother us. It won't bother us.
It's okay. It's fine. It's a little ding, and this is, you know, if we were sitting in a podcast studio, all three of us together, and your phone kept buzzing, that's one thing. But this is the situation that we have to be in.
It's organic.
Yeah, like if we were interviewing someone with kids and they kept climbing in the room, it is what it is. You can't affect anybody.
All right. Well, then I won't worry about it.
Oh, good.
Okay, cool.
So, okay, I'll pick back up with the other question. So, it's funny when when I was a senior. So, I had taken what would have been my senior year off for the Olympics, and I came back for the 2014-2015 season for my last year of college. And it was just like this perfect alignment of everything. Like 3 of us who had been at the Olympics had come back. A couple people who had been gone the previous year because of injury came back. Coach came back. We had a great incoming class of freshmen. It was like all the stars were aligning. And on paper, we knew we had one of the best teams in the country, and we were super excited about it. We went and played one of our earliest games that season against Boston College, who was one of our rivals. And we got smoked, like 9-2. It was probably one of the worst scores that I had ever had in my college career. And all of us seniors and we were a powerhouse of seniors. Like normally you've got, maybe 3 or 4 of your seniors who play and the rest are, kind of average. Every single one of us was like a big name, big, top line player. And we all were just kind of looking at each other like, what do we do? And a lot of what the issue actually was the year before, because there were some of us gone with the Olympics. We had, people out because of injury. Coach wasn't there. So the, expectations were a little different. And the team was super small. So every single person played. All the freshmen played. And so you go from that to now we've got a 25-person roster people are having to sit in the stands, and it was a very different dynamic. And you had people who are kids on the team, mostly underclassmen, who just had never experienced anything like it. And there definitely was a lot of entitlement going on. And the sophomore entitlement was kind of creeping down into the freshmen. And that game against Boston College, like, was really where all of that kind of reared its head. And we got together as a senior class. We got together with coach, and coach is like, what are we going to do? And we as seniors were basically like, we'll handle it. And we kind of have this heart-to-heart with each other. And we said, look, the only way that we are going to get these younger kids to buy in is if we hold ourselves and each other accountable and hold each other to the highest expectations. Like, and so that I remember it so clearly, the 7 of us all sitting around and like deciding that's what we were going to do. And so at practice, like, we weren't getting in the freshmen's faces, we were getting in each other's faces. And we were showing the freshmen, look, or the younger kids, you know, look, this is what we expect of you. What we're expecting from each other is what we expect of you. And I think when the underclassmen started to understand that, wow, they're not just picking on me, they're not being mean to me because I'm younger, or because, you know, they think they're so much better than me. They're holding everybody to this standard. That's when I think we really started to get the buy-in. And once we got the buy-in to, you know, our mantra at Harvard was team first. Once we really got that team first buy-in collectively, and we started winning games and people started seeing the results of that, everything changed. And we just became this train that was running through everybody. It was awesome. We won the Bean Pot. We won the Ivy League title. We won the ECAC championship. We beat BC in the Frozen Four in the semifinal game. Unfortunately, we ended up losing to Minnesota in the national championship game. But to go from getting just freaking wiped 9-2 at the beginning of the season to beating that team and ending up in the Frozen Four final was a really amazing experience. And I couldn't have asked for a better way to wrap up my college career. It was amazing. So I think that was, for us, the communication piece with our peers was just holding each other accountable and holding yourselves accountable is going to make everything that you communicate upwards and downwards that much more impactful.
That's awesome. Hey, so Lyndsey, I know that, you know, you're also a mental performance coach, and you went through the Brian Cain program. Me too. So we're kind of, you know, we're in the same group. And throughout this thing, you've mentioned accountability a number of times. You talked about a process early on. You know, when did you get involved with that, and what was your impetus for getting involved, and how are you using that now with your you know, younger players?
Yeah. So it's funny. I mean, I never really had a mental performance coach early on in college. Never really had that in high school. You know, you had like the people who would come read you like a mindfulness thing here and there, but nothing that was super consistent in the way that you got like the tactical coaching you get for your sport. And so, you know, Brian and I are really close. His wife is actually my best friend, who I would travel back and forth to Colorado with. So we're super close, but I didn't meet him till after the Olympic experience had all been over. And it's funny because he and I often talk, you know, how did I learn about time management? How did I learn about accountability? How did I learn about, you know, having that mission statement and all those different things, and respecting the process? And to be completely honest, a lot of it was, you know, he always talks about, and a lot of people talk about, when you have a strong enough why, you'll always figure out a way how. And I think after I had that aha moment halfway through college, my why became so deeply ingrained that I just started really figuring out the mental game as I went along. You know, you talk about process. I remember, like, I found this quote and it became like my credo, and it was constant dripping hollows out of stone. And that was my like daily reminder. I wrote that thing everywhere. It was my daily reminder to trust the process. Controlling what I could control. I like totally dialed in my nutrition because that was something I could control. I dialed in, you know, my training, making sure that when my teammates were done working out, I was doing another 20 minutes on the bike just to feel like I was going above and beyond. And a lot of that I just had to kind of figure out along the way. For the Olympic team, we did have a sports psychologist, Dr. Colleen Hacker. She was awesome, but we saw her so infrequently. I mean, we maybe got to work with her once every month and a half, sometimes even less than that. So when I really got to know Brian afterwards, we had a lot of conversations, and as I started to kind of understand like his 10 pillars and, you know, different mental performance techniques that he teaches and different strategies that he teaches, I started to kind of fill in the blanks and be like, wow, okay, like I was already doing a lot of this stuff. You're just sort of putting a system behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think everything that he teaches is awesome. Like I said, I mean, we probably see them every weekend. They live 3 minutes away from us.
Oh, really?
So, I mean, he and I are breaking it down constantly and just talking about a lot of different concepts. And when I went through his course, again, it was just like all these things resonating. So I've been working with our kids a lot. I've started working one-on-one with a lot of kids. And I think, you know, the big thing is just in sports and in life and whatever it is, we get so caught up in teaching the X's and the O's and teaching the sport. And it's like, I remember I sit on a board, I know I'm kind of jumping around here, but I sit on like the Friends of Harvard Hockey board now.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of years ago, they were talking about this sports performance group they brought in. And, you know, as part of the board, we see like the financials, and they paid a lot of money for this group to come in for a couple days. And, you know, they're talking about everything that the kids learned. And it was like, well, they learned, you know, what they should be eating before a game and after a game. And they learned, you know, they should be getting 8 hours of sleep. And they learned what the optimal sleep temperature of their room should be. And I finally chimed in. I was like, did they talk at all about time management? No, they didn't really talk about that. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, these are Harvard kids. They understand that they're supposed to get 8 hours of sleep. They understand that they're supposed to be eating well if they want to perform. Like they know what they need to do. But I was like, the reason they don't is because nobody's taught them the how. And that's what I think mental performance is that's the how that unlocks a lot of being able to do what you're supposed to do. Like the reason these kids aren't getting 8 hours of sleep is because they don't know how to manage their time, or they don't know how to manage their emotions or their stress or whatever it is. And so that's when I kind of decided, you know what, I really, really want to learn how to teach this to kids. And that's, you know, I went through Brian's course and got the certification, and it's been amazing in the short time that I've really been like practicing it with kids. The impact has been phenomenal. I've been working with a college athlete who plays on a club team here, and her attitude in just 4 weeks of kind of going through the process has, I mean, you talk about a glass half empty kid to going to a glass half full kid. It's been a night and day transition. So I think it's just super, super important. I think it's critical that coaches learn how to teach this, or at least start working with someone who can teach the mental side of the game. Because I think, you know, with everything that these can do, this is a comparison machine. This is a distraction machine. I just think that in today's day and age, it's even more important than it probably was when I was growing up as a kid, and long before that as well. I think kids need more and more of the mental coaching than ever before. And I've just really been enjoying seeing the impact that it can have.
That's great.
Yeah. And I also think, you know, just to add to your point, because I agree with everything you said, and I did the Brian Kane class not too long ago as well, and started working with my kids. And similarly, you know, I never had any of that growing up. I never had that from my kids, never had any of that. But seeing it now, it's a lot of things that we have taught the kids over the years. But as you said, it's a process, and it's a breakdown of how you do it. And the thing I find most amazing is you talk to kids, even literally today, I'll text one of my kids and I'll say, you know, are you working out? And it'll always the same thing. It's like, yeah, coach, I worked out today. But it'll never be a plan on how you worked out, when you worked out. Was it in your schedule? Did you make sure you got it done? And those are the foundation things that Brian, the program, and the other coaches give as well. So, yeah, it's tremendous. And I think you're right. The other thing about it is we become, whoever the coach is, whether it's their sport coach or their mental performance coach, you become that accountability partner for them as well. When you're checking with them on a regular basis and they have a 30-day plan or whatever it is, it gives them someone to be accountable to. When you see a coach one time a month or one time every 5 months, you can't be accountable to that person. So
right. And I think one of the other things too is, like, I've been talking a lot to kids that I coach about, like, look, if you're going to be on social media, that's fine. But, like, let's start using it in a way to motivate yourself, each other, other people, share your experiences. And so, I mean, that's kind of how, like, we found each other, right? And
yeah,
I've been
yeah.
trying to do a lot more on there, because I just realized, like, if I really want to scale anything that I'm talking about, like, that's the way I have to do it. And I kind of resisted social media for a long time. But I've really been enjoying it. And I think one of the biggest things as a coach is to be able to really, like, walk the walk, right? I mean, I've got kids who are texting me being like, wow, like, it's crazy, you're working out a ton. Like, it's been getting me fired out to do this. And I'm like,
Oh
that's
yeah.
awesome. Or, I've been putting out the mental performance loop and just talking about stuff that's, like, going on in my day and tying it into something that might be relevant to them. And people are, like, loving it. I mean, I get parents texting me being like, my kid is, like, asking for my phone, being able to watch this stuff day after day. And that to me as a coach is really powerful, because it's being able to show not only, like, hey, this is what I'm asking you to do as a player, but also, this is what I'm doing as a coach and as a person to improve myself. And I think, going back to the story about us as seniors, right? Like, the more you hold yourself and the people in higher up positions accountable, the more trust you're going to build with everybody else. So I think it's huge.
Since we're editing this, I'm going to tell you a quick story. It just happened. You talk about these things, these phones.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a kid on our team. Travis, I'll tell you who that is later. And
Part
part
of
of the 30-day challenge that I have with these guys right now is that one thing they have to do is they have to read something motivational, uplifting, 10 minutes a day. This kid spent about 30 minutes trying to convince me that it'd be okay for him to read subtitles of a video. And I'm like, that's not reading. You have to read. But he's so conditioned to doing things the way younger kids today do it. So I had to move him off of that. And we finally got him off of that. But it's very much to what you're saying is, like, it's important to continue to give them the structure and then to show them what you're doing as well. So, like, I flash up the books I read, and I flash up my workouts in the morning, and I make sure, by 9 o'clock I'm done. What are you guys doing? And
Yep.
if the old man at 60 can do it, you guys can do it,
Right.
I'm curious if that is the same kid who you were talking, Lyndsey, about, like, teaching these kids how to manage their time and everything. We had to convince kids that we wanted to do a program, like a mindset program, like kind of like you do, like the 10-week program. But because we're out of season, we wanted to do once a month until we got into the season. And we had to convince them that it wasn't going to take up too much time to do 1 hour, 1 month.
Yeah.
Each month, it was going to be an hour. And he's like, I just don't know if that's going to work into my Mondays, coach. We're like, there's so many hours in a month. You can block off this 1 hour, bud.
But there goes that they're again, not to spend too much time on this, but there goes again where, Brian and the program breaks down how many hours are really in a day or in a week, and how you can kind of just simply make it effective. And I know that, and I forget who it is, but one of Brian's folks is, there's the 14-24, and everybody talks about getting 1% better a day. Every coach I know says get 1% better a day. My son Jordan says it all the time. But when you're able now to show a kid, if you give me 14 minutes and 24 seconds of your day every day to work on something you're weak on, at the end of 6 months or 3 months, you're going to be better at that. It's a tangible thing that we can measure. We can literally measure that. So that's the kind of cool stuff. It gets, as you can tell, I get geeked about that stuff. So
100%. I mean, I think because it's one of those things. Like, I mean, we just did a coaching call the other day with the head coach of the Coyotes. He was really gracious and took some time to come on with all of our Kachinas coaches, some of whom have only been coaching for like a year. And so, a lot of the stuff he was talking about, some of it went right over people's heads. But I asked him that question. I was like, what are you doing to kind of train your guys on mental toughness? And it was interesting. And this is no knock to him, because, like, he's a hockey coach. That's what his job is. And he was talking about all these examples of what mental toughness looks like. And I'm like, right, but, like, what are you training? what are you doing to train them on how to get to what you know it looks like?
Right.
And there wasn't really an answer. So it's like, I mean, this is something from the lowest levels of the game to the highest levels of the game needs to continuously be improved. But I think the cool thing and where a lot of this stuff that we're talking about is going to continue to catch on is not just kids and people and adults are just like really getting used to tracking things, right? Everybody's got a watch, everybody's got apps on their phone, everybody, like, people are getting into that mindset of being able to track their progress. And I think, to your point, once we're able to kind of take a systematic approach with mental performance and really put everything into a really clear plan where they can track what they're doing, I think you're going to see a lot of buy-in from different athletes. And I mean, I personally am already seeing it with a lot of them. And Google Drive is great. I use a ton of spreadsheets, and I can like live track everything that my athletes are doing. And it's really fun, and it's cool for them too to look back and see their progress.
That's awesome. So look, I know we're taking a lot of your time today. I just want to hit on one or two more quick things, and one being the Arizona Hall of Fame. And I just saw that thing pop up, and I'm like, Muhammad Ali? And it's like, and then I look and it goes, well, he resided there at the end of his life. I'm like, you grew up there. That's a different story. I mean, I love Muhammad Ali. He's one of my idols as a kid. Right? He could be any Hall of Fame in the world, but the Arizona Hall of Fame should be for people who are from Arizona and made an impact there. So pretty cool that you're on that list.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, it's really exciting, and we'll see what happens. But there's some big people on there. It's gonna be fun to see how it all goes down.
Yeah, but it's definitely an honor. Yeah, so I mean, Trav, you have any other questions? Because I think we did a great job.
I think this was an excellent conversation, and I think that kids can learn from it. I think that the big message that you're especially trying to get is track your stuff, be on top of it. Just put it on paper, put it in your phone, like use your phone for a positive thing instead of always the comparisons and the likes and Instagram. Just, follow the positive notes, take down all that information, like keep it flowing, keep moving. And just, I want to go for a run right now. I'm excited to get out of here and get
go.
the streets. I'm jacked up to get my schedule for the day going. So I'm pumped.
Good. I think one of the big things that, for kids or whoever's listening, especially when it comes to a lot of the stuff we've been talking about with the mental game, it's like, don't judge yourself. Like, this is no different than starting a brand new sport for the first time that you've never played before. Just because you don't get it right the first day doesn't mean that you're not ever going to get it right. There are days where I still don't do everything perfectly, and I probably never will. And I've been practicing a lot of this stuff for over 6-7 years. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, as you start to really try to plan out your days, if it doesn't go exactly the way you planned it, like, it's fine. Don't beat yourself up. Just get up, try to do it again the next day. And eventually these things are really going to start to click. So it's definitely all about consistency and just, trusting the process and not being too hard on yourself as you're figuring it out. Because it's a lot of figuring out what works best for you, what doesn't, and you'll get there.
Absolutely.
Well, one thing that we've certainly validated over, I've been coaching for 17, 20 years. So through that, but also doing the interviews we started doing on this podcast, the elite athlete, we validated something that most times the elite athlete is also kind of living an elite life, right? They're kind of like the elite person, and you certainly fit that mold.
Thanks.
And when I mean elite, I don't mean perfect. That's the thing. I don't mean perfect, but I mean, we're trying to do things the right way with the best interest of ourselves and other people we work with, all the time. And you're certainly, someone who's doing that. And you're definitely a beacon and a role model. And we wish you nothing but success out there with your programs. And I know that we'll keep in touch through social media and other ways. And anytime you feel like jumping on a call with us, the door is wide open, and we appreciate the time today. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. This has been a ton of fun, and seriously, anything you need, let me know. Happy to help. And anybody listening, same goes for you. I love this stuff. I love being able to take a lot of the experiences that I've been very fortunate to have and use what I can and the lessons I've learned from there to help other people. So this has been great, and I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to share.
That's
Just
awesome.
stay safe out there.
And
Awesome.
Brian and I know each other a little bit, but tell him I said hi.
All right, sounds good. I did
All right.
mention to him I was coming on here, and he definitely knew who you were. So.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, you have a great day. We'll talk to you
All
soon.
right, you too, guys. Take care. Thank you.
Oh,
It was great.
yeah, man. We didn't even need to be there.
No, we didn't need to be there at
We
all.
could have said the 3 questions, and we were good.
Yeah, I didn't need a single bullet point. I didn't need to know anything about her. That was about as easy as it. That's that's what we expected. That's someone who is very, and like not only been through so many experiences, but like this is what she does, right? Like she does, like this is the first time we've interviewed someone who does podcasts